I think one of the main reasons we wanted to do this study is that there's so little empirical data about religion in prisons. And part of why that's important is that we are, as a general population, the US is highly religious. It has a high degree of religiosity. We also have one of the highest incarceration rates and a high recidivism rate relative to other developed nations. So the confluence of those two makes the prison population particularly important. Is that we'd love to be able to also do a study of inmates themselves, but that is virtually impossible just because there are a number of protections for inmates to participate in research studies. So this allowed us to capture a window on religion in prisons that simply is not available through any other vantage point. One thing that's interesting is they are overall satisfied with their job. 64% are either very or somewhat satisfied with their job. And that can be surprising, just that it's a hard job. It's a difficult job, and they've been on the job about 10 years on average. But that doesn't mean that they can't be critical about the system. Again, they also were quite positive in terms of their views of the correctional system. Majority saying that the system where they worked did an excellent or good job at things like maintaining order and discipline among inmates and at meeting the religious needs of inmates, which is important. They could also be critical. They were most negative when it came to talking about rehabilitation programs and the job the system is doing at helping inmates prepare for reentry. One thing I think that's striking there is the degree of religious pluralism among inmates. That's quite different than what we see in the general public. So what I mean by that is that there are a lot of religious groups among the inmate population, and it's hard to quantify, but probably in larger numbers than what we see in the general population. The other thing that's surprising about the religious lives of inmates has to do with how much religious switching goes on. We asked a number of questions about, how many attempts are there at conversion, how much actual switching goes on. About half said some switching is going on. I think another 20% said a lot of switching is going on. I think one of the groups most likely to be seen as growing due to switching were Muslims, and the second most common would be Protestants, both a similar percentage. What the chaplains were saying among inmates is that some of that might not be religiously motivated. It might be what one chaplain called privilege-based conversions. What they mean by that is that some of the inmates may have been especially looking for the kinds of special privileges that you get in prison if you're a follower of a particular faith. So if you're Jewish, you get kosher food or you get special holidays. These are things that we can take for granted on the outside, but that have much more value on the inside. And, it's a very different kind of situation. Again, I think the results will be surprising to many people. We found, just in terms of how common overall is it to encounter extreme religious views among inmates, it's kind of a glass half full or half empty interpretation. I think about 58% of chaplains said that these views were not too or not at all common, and then a sizable minority, 40% roughly, saying that it was very or somewhat common. That alone, I think, will surprise people. We then follow up on that and ask chaplains about how common are extreme religious views among each of 12 different religious groups. So among inmates who are Muslim, who are Protestant, who are pagan or earth-based followers. So those kinds of things. And I think, on those follow-ups, the most commonly cited group is holding extreme religious views was Muslims. I think followed by a sizable minority saying the same about pagan and earth-based followers.